Okay, looks like we are live for November 26th for our weekly stand-up for AllReady. Thank you for joining and for watching. Today's going to be a bit quick. Last week we had come right off of .NET Zood, which Richard can talk a little bit about. He was remote but close to the event, so we'll be able to talk about that a little bit. I'll go over what we're doing with upcoming deliverables. And then Steve will talk a little bit about some upcoming events, at least a couple of which he has something to do with, and a couple of which involve the word London. And then, as I said, Richard will talk about that and summarize a few things, and then we'll be good for today. So in terms of the project, we have just passed a few milestones, which is great. We are past 91 contributors, which is awesome over the course of it, and just shy of 2,400 commits. Against, let's pull up the number here to make sure I get it right, 730 pull requests. So we have an unbelievable amount of delivery and an unbelievable amount of momentum. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, Steve, who's on, is responsible for about 100 or 200 of those commits and or pull requests there. So definitely one of our biggest contributors. So thank you, Steve. We're going against a deadline in December. What we're doing is we're going to have this thing go V1, go live, as we've been talking about in the past launches. Pascal with Humanitarian Toolbox and Jim with the Red Cross have been going through looking for the issues, understanding what's the gap between where we are and where we need to be when we're live. We've got those documented. We keep going in and iterating it. They keep reviewing it. They're going to go in and look after last weekend's big achievements with the Codathon up there in Eindhoven. And we're just going to keep on removing bugs and getting it to the point where it's ready to go in V1 and get in the hands of folks in January. So speaking of some of the upcoming events, Steve, you want to talk a little bit about a couple, 3 events we have coming up in the next couple months?
Yeah, sure. So just added a list of these, in fact, to the project page. So if you go to github.com, HTBox AllReady, on the bottom of the README there, we've got a list of the events and some links to where you can sign up for them. First of those is a short evening event, which will be hosted by my employer, in fact, in the UK. So we're going to try and get some of the devs to hang on after work, do 2-3 hours, bit of an introduction for them, and hopefully get a few more guys hooked on the project. So that's on December the 5th. And then following that, we've got the December 10th event, which is our first London event, London, Ontario, and Canada. So that's the London.NET developers group that are hosting that. And finally, the sort of big one, I think, is the NDC London event in January. So January the 16th and 17th. We've got a 2-day workshop there. I know Richard will be there, I'll be there, and a few of my colleagues will be joining us. So we've got quite a few events that people can get involved in. Certainly the UK now got 2. Should be good.
Excellent. Yeah, so we're going to continue moving into Europe with a couple events. So Richard, you want to talk about what happened a week ago and some of the stuff that's going on?
Yeah, last week I was in the Netherlands for a conference and came down with some kind of plague and ended up missing the last half of my conference. I had the good fortune to have some friends there that I was actually able to leave the hotel and stay with them, because there's nothing in this world worse than having the flu and being in a hotel room. That really, really sucks. So, you know, being in somebody's home and having a little care taken and so forth, but I just was unable to function well enough to actually go to this Codathon that the .NET Zood folks put on. And clearly they did not need me, because they really tore it up. Like for folks that were new to the project, they did make some substantial contributions. You obviously see the flow go through, Tony. Although we've talked about this a bunch of times, I think it's still very fundamentally true. The fact that the organizer, specifically Barry, got into the project a few weeks before and got a feel for how things are working, actually had a pull request. It wasn't a big one, but, you know, it's like there's no substitute for exercising that plumbing, actually going through the whole process at least once, so that you do have a sense of what's going on. And I think the consequences proved out for themselves. A very bright group of folks that were really motivated to contribute, and with enough information all around so that they were able to be successful in doing so. So I think we're learning now what the little bits and pieces that make a Codathon really work well. I'm excited about London, Ontario too. It's not maybe as cool as London, UK. It's still, you know, Canada, but, you know, they were one of the very first Codathons that ever happened when we did not know as much as we know today. about running those things. So it's going to be really neat to be able to compare the two. And I think it speaks volumes for all of the contributors. And Steve, I know your team is coming out to the 2-day one as part of NDC London. The chance to get some practice before the event, to get checked in, to get to sort of experience the project, have a feel for it before you actually arrive that day. The increase in productivity is dramatic. It's absolutely worth your time to go through the process and get some questions answered before you get to the rush of the day of all of those people being around and everybody banging away at code.
And that's a great point, because productivity isn't just so that they contribute more to the project. It's so that they feel their time is that much more valuable and it's worthwhile to come out and donate and volunteer.
You know, AllReady is the project itself is all about utilizing volunteer time efficiently. And I'm really happy that we can take a page from that and try and waste nobody's time. You know, the reviews that Pascal's gone through is about putting an administrator's eye to the app. So, you know, we've got a problem of as developers living in that bubble. So we're fighting against that. Like I want to encourage folks that we are working really hard to make sure that your volunteer coding hours are working on the right thing in the right way. We're really excited about getting to V1, and it's a big deal for us. I have this feeling, talking to different Red Cross groups and other folks, that this particular app, I suspect when it's up and running in the field, we'll never turn it off. There will be people using it every day forever. And that, to me, is a real milestone for the charity, and it's certainly a great example of what it means to be a contributor to HTBox.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, one of the things we know is that, you know, disasters big and small happen every day, and they happen everywhere, but preparedness is an evergreen situation. You always have to be focused on it, and everybody can always be more prepared, and there's different ways to get prepared. And so AllReady is really focused on all the different ways that you can take volunteer hours and focus that in on driving preparedness, not just for fire safety and smoke alarms like our initial use case, but really for any kind of need, whether it's looking at disasters, education of people around financial security, all kinds of different areas. So very excited to see once it gets to V1 where it goes and all of the different ways that people use it. So with that, Steve, unless you've got anything to add other than I've noticed that your background is different. So I think
it is, yeah.
You're on my screen, so you're in the same place as far as I'm concerned, but you seem to be in a different physical spot.
That's it, brand new office, brand new house. So yeah, we're nearly unpacked now.
Excellent. And so you'll slowly be unpacking over the next few years.
Yes.
We all do. So with that, I think we'll wrap up today's stand-up. We'll have one again next week. You can find them on the YouTube listing with the link that we keep sending out. And I think right now it only goes through the 3rd. We'll add in a couple of more so we can get to just before Christmas and the other holidays at the end of the year, but we'll get them through the rest of 2016 so you can see when they're scheduled. And we'll continue on the project and get to V1 in December and get to these great events in December and January. So thanks everyone for joining and for listening in.